Hello and welcome to our Indie Authors Chat for this afternoon. My name's Kim Macleod and hopefully we are live on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. We are, and I've just had a little notification that we are. We've got some people watching. So if you are here, you can actually add a comment just to say hi. And just let us know where you're watching us from. I suppose that would be good as well if we can see. So probably the best place to connect with us and post a comment is on our Facebook page. So we've got Desiree. Hi there. Welcome. I don't know if you can tell us where you are. It'd be nice to know. Nice to know where you are. And we can interact a little bit more. You're from the Philippines. Wow, there we go. We've got somebody. So we're sitting here. I'm in Largs, and I'm going to be introducing Anne Glennie from Cranachan Publishing, and Anne is up in Lewis. So great. We've got somebody watching us and joining in from the Philippines. So what I'm going to do now is just welcome my lovely guest onto the screen with me. I love this live stream stuff that we can. It's just. Did you feel the wheesh there as you were kind of brought onto the stage?
It's so slick and professional. Can you jealous how good it all looks?
So welcome, Anne. Thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest today and coming and talking to us. So before we really kind of delve into all stuff about children's books, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, first of all, hello, Kim. Thank you for the invitation. Hello, everybody that's watching. This is a nice way to spend lunchtime rather than doom scrolling through Twitter. So this is a nice change. So, well, how did I begin? I'm now 5 years on in our publishing journey. I started Cranachan back at the very beginning of 2016, and I'm still learning. 5 years on, I am still on that journey, still trying to make it work, and you know, we're doing our very best. How did I begin? I'm actually a teacher to trade. My degree is in English. And actually, away years and years and years ago, when I was thinking about what to study at university, I did actually go on an open day to Napier University to look at a publishing degree. But I thought, no, I'm not sure. I don't think I know enough about publishing to do a degree in it. Maybe I'll do English instead. And it's funny, it's taken me all that time and all these years to come full circle and end up here, finally, you know, doing what I love. You know, I love books, I love learning, I'm passionate about all of that stuff, and Cranachan allows me to combine all of that. But what made me really begin was I was writing myself, and I'd been very seriously reading for a long time about publishing and self-publishing, and I was really looking to go down the self-publishing route myself until a friend was traditionally published, but she had quite a disappointing experience. She didn't like the cover she was given. She didn't have a lot of say in it. And I said, look, I'm not a designer. I said, but let me have a show. Let me just try and just see. And I did 3 covers for her. She loved them all, chose one, and that actually ended up on her first published book. And that was, I suppose, the turning point that made me think, well, do you know what? Maybe I could give this a go. You know, if that publishing company is a traditional publishing company, and, you know, I'm seeing my friend's dream really destroyed in front of my eyes, maybe I could do it better. Maybe I could give it a go. So that was the impetus to starting, if you like. It was supposed to be an outlet for our writing, but it's become so much more than that. And when we opened to submissions, we were blown away by the quality of writing, particularly in the children's books. And as a teacher, I couldn't understand why so many of these books had not already been published. Many of them were absolute gifts for the classroom, and it was a no-brainer. It was very organic. So sometimes people will say to me, that was very clever what you did, publishing for a kind of, you know, niche in the market. Well, actually, don't tell anybody, but it was more organic than that. It wasn't a business decision. It was, this is too good not to to focus on this. So that was the beginning, really.
Yeah. And you've been, so 5 years, like you said, still learning. Well, we are now, 12 years involved in, as well, still learning. There's always something new to learn. That's the reality, isn't it? So was children's books just the natural thing for you then, just having been the teacher and kind of, just in that role? Was that really kind of what led you to that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a primary teacher. I have children myself, but I'm drawn to children's fiction, to children's literature. It played such a big part in me becoming a teacher. That love of reading, it was, so many of my teachers, but in particular, Mrs. Clark, when she would read stories to us, things like Charlotte's Web, everything that teachers read to me stayed with me. Books like, showing my age now, A Gift from Winklesea, one of our teachers read that to us, and I've read that to every class I've ever had. And that joy of reading that you have in the classroom, that relationship that the children have with you, with a book, the excitement they have when they don't want to stop at the end of the day because they want to read the next chapter. There's no better feeling than that, of all being invested and caught up in a story and in a book. And I feel that school experience led to me doing what I have with my life, with learning, with books, with teaching, and now with publishing. And I want every child to be afforded and have the opportunity to have those same experiences with books, and to have that reading for pleasure brought to life for them. So yeah, without a doubt, children's books is for me where my heart is. Through in my living room, on my mantelpiece, I have ladybird books in glass cases. Like, I'm the real deal. I love books. I have a wee shelf up here. I have my childhood book I bought very expensively online. I'm going to track it down. I've got a copy over there. So yeah, this is huge passion for me. And the teaching just really ties it all together.
It oozes from you, Anne, when you're talking about children's books and books. And I think that's a great thing to have, though, is that passion for story, because it's story. It's been immersed in stories. And I remember The Wind in the Willows, when I was young. And my love of sort of crime fiction probably came from reading Nancy Drew mysteries when I was young. That was the kind of thing that got me into that as well. And then all the children's books that we read with our kids as well, because those were magical times.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's it. So it's fabulous that you're now, helping to find stories and connect those stories then to, the next generations of children that are coming along. And I love the fact that you've got these books that you've kept. I've still got stuff stashed away as well that I've, favourite ones that are a bit dog-eared and stuff that will never ever see the inside of a charity shop, because they're kept exclusively for us. So, and if anybody's got questions, folks, while we're chatting, those of you who've watched anything that I've done before, you'll know that I can get a bit carried away sometimes, just blethering and having a good chat. But if anybody has got a question and something you want to, please put it in the comments, because it'll come up and we'll get round and ask Anne some of your questions too. I wanted to kind of just then touch on the idea of, you said you then open to submissions. So when you said, yes, now we are now this Cranachan Publishing, we are now open to submissions, were you deluged actually by submissions initially, or was it, did that take a little while for people to get to know you?
No, we did. We had so many more than we expected. So yes, even though we weren't terribly well known, we had loads of submissions. And I suppose that was, and we hadn't expected it either. We hadn't really thought that far ahead about what might happen. But it was a lovely feeling. And I think, despite the fact nobody had really heard of us, despite the fact we hadn't published any books before, people, want to get their work out there. And the thing is, there are more writers, there are more books to be published. There's, you're not going to always get the the airtime, the deal, the publisher, the break that you need. Which is why personally, I knew kind of how things were tough, seeing friends going through the process, which is why personally I'd been looking at self-publishing, because I thought, well, actually, in this day and age, what's wonderful is you can control the narrative, you can control your book, and that's something that really appeals to me about the self-publishing aspect. But it's also a part of the job that I enjoy in Cranachan is I control, I choose. I get to choose.
Yeah, you're choosing the books that you're putting out under your Cranachan kind of banner. So how do you choose? What is it that when you've got all these submissions, and what is it that captures you, that makes you really think this book is definitely something that we want to publish?
There's a few things that make what I would term a Cranachan book. But first and foremost, it's just what you said, it's story. The story has to be there. I've got to be with you from page one. I want to turn the pages, particularly for children. Children today, they could be playing in their games, they could be on their phone, they could be online. There's so much competition for their time. So if anything, books have to be even better than they were before. You can't take any risks that you've got to bring them with you from page one. So stories first. And when I'm reading submissions, I'm not reading as Cranachan, I'm reading as Anne, I'm reading as a reader. I'm not looking at, let's say, punctuation or spelling, I'm looking for story. That's what I read for. And then if that's there as I keep reading, I'm also then looking at, let's say, the quality and the depth of the writing, because the other thing that would make a Cranachan book is one that's worthy of further study in the classroom. Because with my teacher hat on, a big part of our market, big part of our audience is teachers in classrooms, children in classrooms. So there has to be, if you like, an extra layer there. The vocabulary, for example, isn't dumbed down, that children will, without realising it, learn as they are reading. And that's one of the other things I tend to look for, is that the book in some way will be a good fit for our list. We do, for example, a lot of Scottish historical fiction, or books that have subjects that tie into things that are naturally studied as part of the curriculum. So I'm looking there for ties, for ways in that I know this book will work for the classroom. Teachers will be desperate to get their hands on it, but equally it would sit perfectly on a bookshelf in Waterstones or an independent bookshop anywhere else as a great reading for pleasure read at the same time. So it's quite a big ask. I'm looking for my books to tick a lot of boxes. And then the kind of last thing we tend to look for is some kind of, well, the clue's in the name Cranachan, it's a very Scottish name. Look for some kind of Scottish connection, whether that's the author is Scottish, it's set in Scotland, there may be some Scots in the book, maybe Scottish theme. Doesn't always have to be, but again, that ticks another box for me. So yeah. I have to say, I'm quite fussy when it comes to going through submissions.
Yeah. And that's, obviously we work with lots of writers, publishing lots of different books. And it can be quite soul destroying. I know we've had authors who've been pitching to various, publishers over the years and not got anywhere. And sometimes then going, oh, well, I'm going to self-publish now. Others who have decided from the start, they want to control their book and they're not going to go through that process and put it out there. And you and I were having a little chat earlier about how a book has to work for you as a publisher. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the story isn't any good, or that it couldn't work for, it's so thanks for authors out there. Please don't be disheartened if you are getting knockbacks from publishers, because it's not necessarily that your writing isn't any good. It might just be that it doesn't fit with what you've got, what you're looking for.
That's the thing, my list of needs and wants is quite specific, quite long, and very often I'll be rejecting things and I'll be saying it's just not right for us just now. I can think of several books off the top of my head that I've rejected that weren't right for us that have gone on to be published elsewhere, being traditionally published. One was a book. At that time, we weren't doing any fantasy. But we've changed that now, but they were published elsewhere. Another book was sent in to me as a young adult read, kind of crime for young adult, but I loved it. I read it and I said, look, I'm not the right publisher for you. I said, you need a kind of bigger publisher than me, one that has UK reach, not just real Scottish reach. I said, plus, I said, this, to be honest, would work better as an adult book than a young adult book. And, you know, that person was extremely grateful. And she said, I loved the feedback you gave me so much and your whole approach and attitude. She said, I deliberately went and found, you know, a publisher similar to yourself in size that would give me that, you know, if you like, relationship, to give me that feedback. And her book has been published with them. So, you know, I always try when I can to give honest feedback. Sometimes people take it well, sometimes they don't. But the thing about feedback is it's always subjective. It's someone's opinion. What I love and what I rate will be different to the next person. You know, it's a taste thing.
We've just had a little comment here from Willie, who's also in the Philippines area. We're popular in the Philippines today, who said, I'm listening. Remember, the Beatles were rejected 22 times before someone saw a tiny light of inspiration. So yeah.
Those are the things to remember, you know. There's lots of similar stories out there. One of our authors, Barbara Henderson, her 6th book just came out with us this year, The Chessman Thief.
The cover's amazing. It just looks so inviting.
Very pleased with the cover on this one because it's actually got silver foiling.
Oh, you're going up in the world, so it's like...
It's extra pennies, but you know, it helps it stand out in the shelf. It's been worth it. But Barbara has had over 100 rejections, and she was our first signing for Cranachan. She was the first person we signed, the first book we took on, and someone had actually rejected her first novel for Luck, which was about the Highland clearances, and they said to her, "It's too schooly." And I said, we want it. It's perfect. It's a gift for schools. And that's one of our best sellers. And it's one of the first books we put out there. So, you know, don't give up. You know, you see in all walks of life, it's the people who don't give up. It's that tenacity to stick to it, to do what you want and to make it happen. And I think, yes, it's hard. The rejections are difficult, but it's part of it. Part of the process, and it's just finding the right home. And often it can be a sense of timing as well. You know, there's things that I have published in the past that had the same book come to me now. Even though I would still rate the writing and everything, I wouldn't publish it again because, for example, we're no longer publishing picture books. We're no longer publishing illustrated work of any kind. And that's purely a business decision, a financial decision, which unfortunately, you know, rather naively, when I came into this, I thought, you know, if it's good writing, if I believe in the book, if I believe in the writing, then, you know, we'll publish it. But if we want to stay in business, sadly, I've had to become more business savvy and think, you know, is this book viable? Is there a market for this book? Is there a readership for this book? And does it fit into the marketplace? Because that often matters too. So, you know, if you're writing a children's book, is your word count within the right range to sit on the shelf with those other books? Because often, you know, there are always going to be exceptions. But it's much safer to stay within those. There's a reason that, you know, there's guidance on how many words it should be. So, for example, the majority of our books, like this one, this comes in around 40,000 words. And that for 8 to 12-year-olds is, you know, bang on. And of course, people will always say to me, oh, but J.K. Rowling in Harry Potter, it's, you know, 80,000. Yeah, well, that's one of the exceptions. That's one of the exceptions.
Yeah. And J.K. Rowling, if we use that as an example, so many adults actually read, you know, and yeah, lots of the children loved it and the stories are great, but yeah, it was exactly, it was, and she was rejected so many times before somebody decided that they were going to take a chance on something that was bigger than the norm, you know.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same thing, I think, for our authors who are choosing to self-publish. They have to be aware as well that they've got a market for their book, that they've got an audience, they understand who their audience is and how they're going to connect with them. And those are the conversations that I'll often have with a writer when they come to us early on, you know, because I'll have a look at it. And the same thing, it's only my opinion, you know, but, you know, but I will have a conversation with them about, well, what's your expectations? You know, what are you hoping? You know, if you're hoping to be, you know, the next J.K. Rowling and the bestseller, then, you know, unless, you know, I'll never say never, right? Because yeah, there are, you know, people can be amazingly connected or just get the right person to suddenly promote something before you know it's out there. But actually, just knowing who your audience is, what you want them to experience, how you're going to connect with them, in the same way as you do with your Cranachan business. You know, your publishing business, you've got to do that. And an author has to really think like that if they're going to be self-publishing, because ultimately they are the business as well. And and it's a shift then, you know. So
one of our authors sent a manuscript to me recently, and it was 20,000 words. So straight away, and there's things now, there's habits that I've picked up along the way. So 20,000 words, that for me, that's 7 to 9 years old. That's not something we currently do. You know, the book is more humorous than what would fit on the Cranachan list. Our list has a very serious streak. So again, it's being aware of, you know, where's my book going to sit? If I am going to approach a publisher, does it fit with their list? So people can save themselves a lot of heartache by doing that groundwork first of all. You know, we're currently closed to submissions, but that doesn't stop people sending you things. But, you know, I received a full book in the post the other day, and, you know, I feel for the authors, but on one level, it makes me a wee bit annoyed, to be honest. It makes me a bit cross because I don't have time. I am doing everything in this business myself. You know, I work way more than I should, way more than is healthy. Forget work-life balance. You know, to have your own business, you understand that, you give it up. But I think, you know, we're closed. But not only that, you're sending me a book and you're asking me to send it back. But you've not bothered to read on our website that we're closed to submissions and we don't do picture books and we don't do illustrated work of any kind. So, you know, put that work in to make sure. It seems so basic, but so many people do not follow the instructions that you set out for them.
Yeah. And if we're thinking then around, like, you know, just being aware that your book is going to be, if you're targeting, say, 8 to 12-year-olds as an example, is there, I mean, just from now, you said that you're now sort of publishing some fantasy, you know, type stuff, you know, are you aware of trends? Are you aware of books that are being, that would seem to be more appealing at this point in time? Have you seen that shift or change at all in your 5 years?
Not really. I feel as a small company with a kind of Scottish focus and with much of that historical, we're kind of immune almost to trends. You know, I can publish what I want regardless of what the trends might be. So for example, you know, people will be saying, oh, YA's had a bit of a dip over the last 5 years, but I'm still publishing YA because we have a market for it. Mermaids, for example, there used to be a lot of mermaids coming through in submissions. That used to be really quite big. So there are trends that I would stay away from. You know, and even with the Scottish slant, selkies have been big as well. Get a lot of submissions with those in them. So yeah, there are times I would say to follow trends and times not to. Sometimes it can be think, well, hang on, there's quite a lot of that around. Maybe we don't need any more. And then there are times where, you know, you can maybe resurrect a trend that had been and it's maybe time for it to come back. You know, that could be something that people could focus on. But No, I wouldn't say I've noticed trends. I suppose I keep my eye on what works for us in our market. And if there is a trend, I'll be aware of it, but I won't necessarily need to pay it too much attention.
Yeah. So first and foremost, it has to be a really good story. I mean, that's the thing you want to be capturing. And like I say, from the very first page, I mean, an adult might read. I mean, I always say to people, I mean, I know if someone sends me a book and they're looking at publishing and they're just looking for some help with it, I'll know within the first few pages whether it's going to capture me. But an adult might read a little bit more, whereas a child's going to be, if you, like you said, if you don't capture me right away, then I'm off and I'll go and play my Xbox or whatever. So,
I bought a couple of children's books recently. One of them was Catherine Rundell, Rooftoppers. Oh, what was the other one? And do you know what stood out for me? It was those first pages. You're right in there. It starts with the action. The one of them, you're in a plane crash. It's, there's none of this description or here's how we got there. It didn't start in the school. They're preparing for a journey. Then they're getting on a plane. It starts, they're in the plane's going down.
yeah.
So, it's, some people call it, start late and leave early. So start late on in the story and leave early, get out in time. And I think that's really good advice. You can't afford to wait. That story's got to grab you immediately. And honestly, when I'm reading submissions, I can tell very quickly if a book's got that or not. I'll know, straight away. And the only thing that will keep me reading is if the quality of the writing is still there and if there's enough of a story so that I know that it's fixable. We can, one of the books we've published, we actually got rid of the first 3 chapters. Now, that was obviously a huge ask for the author concerned. That hurts, you're not just editing, you're not just getting rid of a couple of things. 3 chapters, that hurts. But, it was sore at the time. But afterwards, we both agreed it made it a better book. Because what I said to the author was, I said, actually, the story doesn't start till right here. So think about that, and if you are submitting to places, those first 3 chapters need to be the absolute best that they can be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I suppose I just want to pick up on that point of editing. Mm-hmm. Because the worst thing for me is that if someone submits a book to me and they've never had anybody even read it before, it's almost like, they've given it to me to read and they've not even thought of self-edit or even given it to some others to, and you don't want to give it to other people who are going to slate you off completely, but you need some honest feedback from people as you're going along this process. With what is your experience of working with an author and editing their work? How has that been for you?
Well, I enjoy the editing process. I'm supposed to be editing a book that's over 100,000 words long at the moment, and it's kind of sitting there and I'm thinking, but I know once I get into it, I will enjoy the process and I'll enjoy it. But what I do tell the authors is this is the most painful part of the whole process. And it is, but it's also the part where you will learn the most about your own writing. You'll learn about your writer's tics. You'll learn about the things that you tend to say or tend to have your characters do. So you'll start to become aware of perhaps errors that you tend to make in your work. So the process is, it can be painful at the time. You're like, what? I've got to get rid of this character, or I've got to get rid of a chapter, or you're taking out that whole passage of description. Oh, yeah, it's not adding anything. It's not adding anything. We're going to lose people here. So those decisions are all made for a reason, but it's all about making the book. Just remember, it's about making the book the best it can be. Yeah. So that when the reader is reading, there's nothing that disrupts the flow for them, so that it's an effortless read, so that once they're in, nothing's going to disturb them or jolt them out of that experience. So, that's that's where the hard work happens, is in editing. And if you haven't had someone look at your work before, and to be honest, even if you have, even my authors have been through editing with me lots of times, I'm certain there'll be, the air will be blue with my name, that you go through a period where they'll hate my guts. They will. I know that, because it's a hard job. I'm a hard taskmaster. I want the book to be bulletproof. I don't want anyone to be able to come back to the author or to me and say, oh, hang on, this wasn't quite right what you did, or you made a mistake here, or, we want it to be as tight and clean and good as it can be.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the same for, I think, anybody who's going to put a book out there. And we do have people who will self-publish them by themselves completely, without using any support service, whatever, and just write a book and put it out there. That's not going to be a good seller. You're not going to achieve the best book by just kind of throwing something together. Your first effort at writing something and fire it out there. It needs, it needs refined, it needs polished. Every book needs an edit, and it is so difficult to do it yourself, because you only read what you think that you said, and you're so immersed in your story if you're writing something that it's really difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
You really can't see it. You need fresh eyes. Even I need fresh eyes when I'm editing. So I'll obviously have read a book, given the initial read. I'll give feedback on that manuscript. I might have given, structural changes, or I want to see more of this. So sort of more general, broad brush feedback. But when it comes to that line by line edit, I need a period of time in between, so that when I'm coming to that, I'm coming to it fresh. And as the author, there are so many things you don't see. And even accomplished authors, sometimes they'll say to me, oh, I can't believe I did that, or I can't believe I didn't notice that, or, oh, thank goodness you saw that, or, so you're too close. And anyone, I would say that's the biggest mistake you could make. Even me, let's say I was putting something out there, even though I'm editing as part of my job all the time, technically I can do it, but I would have to have someone else edit it for me, because I'm too close. And also, especially, something that I think people need to be aware of is there are what I would term writer's tics that sometimes writers writing for the first time have, and they're like red flags. You don't want them to be in your writing. You want it to look as polished and as accomplished as any other book on the shelf out there. But without an editor, especially if it's your first time, that won't happen. Use the process, learn from it, and take it to your next book. There's nothing more valuable than that for your writing.
Yeah. We've got a question here from Kim Hartley, and she said, what is the main benefit to being published over self-publishing? Oh, so I suppose, Anne, so what would your take that be on that then, as a publisher?
I suppose for me and the authors in Cranachan, we have something that we call Clan Cranachan. The authors are very much a family. We have a WhatsApp group. We all support each other. I'm doing the heavy lifting. I'm doing the investing part. That's really the publisher's job. So I'm investing in the print run. I'm investing the time in the site, the marketing that I do, the promotional materials that I make. I'm pitching my books and my authors to festivals, to things like that. But at the same time, I am a small publisher. There is a limit to what I can do for my authors. So, let's say, Kim, for example, you had a choice between being published through Cranachan or doing it yourself and self-publishing. I would say there's not a lot of difference there. If you've got the time to devote to your book, that's what makes the difference. Whether it's published through a publisher or whether it's self-published, it's that if you've got a quality product, if you ensure that your book, can sit on the shelf the same as any other book, it's then about finding your readership. Something that's very clear and something I used to talk a lot about before I started Cranachan and when I was thinking of self-publishing was readers don't care who the publisher is. Readers don't know. It's only people that move in the circles that, who published it. It's writers care, in their discussions, but readers don't.
Yeah.
Readers don't care. So if it's the effort that you put into engaging with your readers, finding your platform, building that platform that matters.
Yeah.
Having your book out there, having that book there, the physical book, is what makes the difference. People can buy it, it's available. It's how you then drive traffic and drive readers towards it.
Yeah. And I think from our perspective, I mean, obviously we've been around, sort of 12, 13 years. We got into self-publishing through the fact that my husband writes crime fiction and he chose to, put his books out there for himself and people asked us for help. And effectively, that's how indie authors developed, So we work with writers, all over the world, publishing all sorts of different books. And the thing I would say is that if you are choosing to self-publish, then you still have to do all the things that that Anne's talked about. You can find people to help you with those individually. Or the reason that our business developed was that people came to us and said, well, can you actually do those functions for us? So we have got teams of editors. So, we do the design work on covers and the interior design and all the creation so that you, like you say, and you end up with a book that actually looks the same as any other published book that would sit on the shelves of Waterston's sort of thing, just as well. But it's out there in the marketplace, it's available for sale. And as a writer, I think it's really about choice. It's a bit like, years ago, the music industry was very much, you couldn't put a record out there unless you had a record deal. And then that all changed. And, artists decided they wanted to have control for themselves and were prepared to put the work in to then build their audiences and get out there. Or they want a record deal because that music producer and record label have got bigger contacts and can put something out there for you. So, those are the options. But either way, you need to put together a really good book. That's the reality. A good book and know how to connect with your audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I suppose the thing I want to then move on to, I mean, you said your key audiences are are children 8 to 12 or the kind of young adult in schools, and because you're doing a lot of work to support your books to get into schools. And this comes, I mean, I love the fact that because your teacher hat really shines through in this. So tell us a little bit about what else you do so that you really help to connect with your audience in the schools.
It's about adding value, for your audience. So if you're writing books for children, the biggest audience you can be aiming for is classrooms and teachers, because in an ideal world, if you can imagine a class set of your books being bought for a school, you start to get some serious sales then if people see your book as a book that can be studied in classrooms or as a book that everyone would want to read, at the same time. There's such value in that. So it's, how do you make your book one of those ones that teachers want to choose? And resources is one of the easiest ways to add value. So something we provide on our website for schools are free resources to download, and they're fairly easy, and it's something that any writer could easily make to accompany their books. And we do ours in a kind of grid format, and we do them for the chapters, but you could easily do this in a Word document. And one of our authors, Lindsay Littleson, she has her own resources that she's also created on her website for all of her books that are published by us and also by other publishers. And that drives traffic to the books. I also work closely with schools and teachers as I do some like literacy consultancy. That's I've been doing that for the last 10 years. And I'll show a slide of our books at the end just to alert teachers to what's available and what's coming up. And often, you need to remember teachers are so busy. They literally, no matter what you think about teacher holidays, teachers very often actually don't have a life outside teaching, because that daily responsibility of having a class means you're kind of locked in a cycle of preparing work, planning work, marking work, and getting ready for the next day. So if you can provide something that's going to save them time and that signposts for them, this would be a good book for you to read because it ties in with the curriculum, or it covers these themes that are really prevalent just now and today. It will, provide a way in for discussion about these topics that are in the news. And because here are some resources, the comprehension questions are already done for you. So as a writer, if you think about, what do I want children to take from this? What discussions do I want them to have? What questions do I want them to have about it? And then use that, read your chapter and come up with some questions for that chapter. It's as simple as that. Don't be tied into, just bog standard questions. If you have a look at the examples on the Cranachan website, you'll see what I mean. We have more creative questions where it will get you to do things like, okay, go away and create a map, based on what you read in chapter 7, or chart the course of the ship from China to the UK as they travel around India, blah, blah, whatever it is. So use the book in a creative way. So, for example, one of the ones that we just had was the race. So this is the one that's most sort of fresh in my mind. The resources are online for this one. And we had lovely creative tasks like for art to do a line drawing of trainers, because at the heading of each chapter, and that's Eric's chapter, at the heading of most of the chapters, that's still Eric, there's little shoes, a line drawing of trainers. So it'd be use your trainers, set them up in a still life, do a nice line drawing of them, or design an outfit for the Olympics. Be the fashion designer, create all the outfits they will need, choose a country and come up with the outfits, you be the designer for it, or design a new cover for the book. So think creatively, make the tasks ones that children will want to do that go along with your book. But when I train teachers, I talk about wring the learning out of the book, squeeze out every drop that's valuable in there, and give them a choice of things to do. But if it's done, teachers will often say to me when I'm doing the training, those books look great, which one's got the resources? It's almost like, it doesn't matter what the book is, I'll buy the one that's got the resources with it. So it's a huge driver. One of the other things that some of our authors do is they'll provide a hook, and they'll say, on social media, they'll say, if you read our book, for example, Lindsay Littleson with the Titanic Detective Agency, that's our best-selling book, mainly because of all the work Lindsay does to engage with teachers and readers online. She'll write your class a personalised letter to introduce you to the book and the themes, and that's obviously a big time investment for her, but she has a template that she uses, and then she's able to offer schools things like digital author visits off the back of that as well. So she has posters and things that she can email out to them as well. It's a great way to raise awareness of your books and to get people using them in the classrooms. Think about how can you add value. If your books are for younger children, the resources thing still applies. Could you have a mask? Could you have a colouring in sheet? Could you have a word search? Is there something you can offer for free that people can use? Could you have make bookmarks that they could print out or colour in? It's the same with reaching out to bookshops. Think about our libraries. What do I have that's added value? So for the race, we did stickers that are book plates, and I got Roy to sign them. So these are easy ways, very cheap ways of adding value. If you do send a package to a school, you could include bookmarks, a few bookmarks, things like that, things that will catch their eye. We do postcards as well. for our books. So something that as well that's attractive that I know that teachers won't throw in the bin. So even if they don't take you up on your offer straight away, it'll go up on a pin board, it'll go up on a classroom door. And then the next time when they are looking for an author visit, when you're working with teachers, give it to them on a plate. They're so busy. Bullet point what you can offer, how much it is, and how they can contact you. Put everything in there so that when you hit them at the right time, they're able to easily take you up on whatever you can offer.
Yeah. And I think that's been so valuable, Anne. Thank you so much for sharing that. And please do, go and check out Cranachan's website. I mean, your website is just fabulous. Go and have a look at the books that, that Anne has published. And the fact that you can, just get a sense of the resources that you've put there because you've got them there as free downloads. Just have a little look at what's been created. I think you would really, you would then really get inspired. We've just worked with a teacher who's actually written a book, sitting up the corner there. So Our Other Lives, Pam Ray, and it is a World War II story that's actually connected to a school. And Pam has written, actually in the book, she has actually written some questions at the end of each chapter. And that was because as herself, she was a teacher, and she's primary teacher. World War II still a topic that was, and this is actually the whole time travel, the children to kind of get thrown back in time to suddenly be immersed in that. So it's just, there are lots of different, tips and techniques. But as you say, if you're writing for children, you've got a captive audience. You at least know where you can get to people that actually, you've got like a whole squad of them that are in that space.
They're in boxes that you can.
So definitely, just think about the skills. And I suppose there might be quite a lot of people who are watching who then go, oh, but I don't know anybody. I don't know how to approach a school. I don't know how to, even like kind of begin to speak to the teachers. Any tips even just getting started?
There's so many things you can do. Start small. The thing about living in the internet age is everything's online. You can find out, choose 5 or 10 schools that are near you or local to you. Begin with those, or begin even slightly further away if you want to build up your confidence first before you hit your own neighbourhood. You can also contact people online. Lots of teachers are on what we would term teacher Twitter and hashtag EduTwitter. Build up your platform there and start tapping into. There are so many people who are looking for books. Teachers will say, oh, can anybody give me a book that would tie in with World War II? Or I'm looking for something different. We're a bit fed up with, Good Mr. Tom or whatever it is we've always been using. So tap into all those resources. But as for approaching schools, it can be really simple. When we first started out, we had a very basic template that we would give to authors. And it's just a rundown of, I'm an author, here's what I do, this is what my book's about, and it covers these themes. I can come and do a visit in person, or I can also offer digital visits. I can, what will they get? Make it clear for them, bullet point what the visit would do, bullet point what added value you can provide, whether that's, I'll provide 2 free copies for your school library, or I'll provide free bookmarks for every child that buys a book, or I'll provide books for sale and sign them on the day, and I'll also be able to offer a discount, or to think, or what is that added value? What can I offer? But I'm always saying to teachers in my work, never underestimate the power of an author visit. This is something that schools really should be doing regularly as part of their reading for pleasure culture. So tap in to the kind of buzzwords, the reading for pleasure. Are you looking to enhance reading for pleasure in your school? Are you able to offer tips on creative writing? Think about the added value you can give to those schools, and then set yourself a target every week. Once you've made up your sort of template letter, let's say, okay, I'm going to send my template letter, I'm going to send a postcard, I'm going to send a bookmark. Build your own little package of what you can offer, and then refine it over time as you go, depending on the feedback that you get, depending on how successful you are. So much can be done, for example, by email. Like Lindsay, for example, sends this out by email. But I also know that teachers are overwhelmed with email too. So I would actually say, you know, to get in front of the right eyeballs, try sending out a physical package. You know, it still works with me. You know, often I'll get people getting in touch wanting to be editors or proofreaders, and still what gives a big impact for me is if someone takes the time to write me a proper letter and I get it in the post. So those little things, those visual things can make a big difference too. So try a mixture, try emailing, try physical packages, see what works. What do people respond to?
Send them a tea bag and a biscuit, you know. It's like that was one of our things that we did years ago with stuff. You know, send them some stuff and here, have a cup of tea and a biscuit while you have a read at this. You know, it was just
but those things stick in your memory, you know, and it gives you a wee lift. Just think of something that could lift a teacher's day, make it a no-brainer for them. You know, if you're saying, and I don't always advocate doing visits for free, but there is a time, you know, if you're going to be able to sell your book significantly, it might be worth saying to, you know, the first 5 letters, I'm offering free visits where I do this, and this, and I'll take these copies to your school. It gets your foot in the door, you know. Lots of my authors go on return visits to their, you know, they have schools that they call they're my schools.
Yes.
They have relationships with them.
Yeah.
Think about things too, like if you're working on a new book, would one of your P7 classes, would one of your P5 classes be interested in, you know, feeding back on, you know, the book that I'm writing just now? You know, there's lots of ways to get people involved and to get your foot in the door of schools.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's just been amazing. Thank you. And there are some of the authors that have been working with us that are really proactive and do a great job. But you've just given, I think, even I'm sure and I'm thinking particularly of Stuart Reid, who was hoping to join us. So I'm sure Stuart will probably be sitting there scribbling out. You'll have given him some more ideas, probably.
I don't think he needs any lessons. He's got it covered.
But I'm sure he's got some more. You'll have some more tips from something that you've shared there as well. So that's great. I think you and I were talking yesterday, and we were just around the expectation, though, of how much a publisher can do for the author. And you've spoken there about lots of things that the author can do, you know, for themselves. And even if they are with you as the publisher, they still have to do a lot of this on their own. You can't possibly you can't organise everything for every author to go out and do all of that. They have to do a lot for themselves.
Well, you know, there's a couple of reasons for that. The first thing is I can't keep all the balloons in the air. You know, if every book, and to date, I think I've published around 30 books, that's like me keeping 30 balloons in the air. It's physically impossible. You know, I'm already stretched beyond what I can reasonably do. So really, it's the author that needs to keep that balloon in the air. And as the publisher, I will give it a tap in the air every so often when I can, when I'm pitching you to a festival. There's also lots that goes on behind the scenes that people may not necessarily see, that I'm still keeping your book up there. You know, at Cranachan, we talk about our backlist being just as important as our front list. That's absolutely true. So I'm still telling people, you know, about the books that are even in our backlist. But the other thing that's really important about the authors getting behind this is because people don't want to hear from me. People want to hear from the author. People want the relationship with the author. It's only the author that can give that added value and connect with the readers. You know, so there's things that I can do. Yes, absolutely. But there's things that only the author can do too. And honestly, you see the difference. You know, it's once you have that quality product that we've talked about, that finished book, the difference to how well that book does is frequently down to the author. It's how fast and how far the author drives. If the book was a car, how far and how fast does the author drive that book? how far are they going to take it? Because, you know, for example, Lindsay, this book came out very early in 2019. it's still our bestseller because her foot's on the pedal. And she's finding ways to keep making those connections with readers. So if you want your book to be a success, you have to take control of the reins. Within Cranachan, we all try and help and support each other. But as a publisher, my resources are limited. There's a point where, it stops.
And that's the case, I think, with big publishers. I mean, there's always going to be a limit to the amount of resource and effort that they can put into a book. I mean, with ourselves, I mean, you talked about your Cranachan support groups that have all your authors, and that was the kind of foundation stone, I suppose, for Indie Authors World, because we started off doing some events, and it was for us like helping those people who were trying to figure out how to self-publish way back, before it was really kind of trendy and everybody knew what to do. And that kind of community support is really, really important. Find your tribe, whatever that you've got that can actually kind of be there to support you and encourage you. And then you can work alongside them, and that's the other thing. Authors are never in competition with each other, because nobody only ever reads. If you're a reader and people and children love reading books, or the schools are looking for, they're always like you said, they're looking for something else, or they like that. If that person doesn't have another book in their series, they're on to look for something else. So if you're working alongside other authors, you can really then help, spread your reach as well if you're doing some stuff in partnership even, so.
Books run out and schools quickly become loved and dog-eared, and, there's a churn rate in schools for books. Books are needed everywhere. And as for being in competition, see in places like social media, the authors are so supportive of each other. So absolutely, even if you're thinking, do I really need to do it? I promise you, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
The buzz that you can generate online, even just being yourself, it doesn't need to be buy my book. Absolutely not. That's the wrong way to go about it. But it's, here's me, I'm a writer. Here's what I'm doing today. I've grown something in the garden, or bought a new pair of shoes. It's that human angle, you the human, that's what people want to share, build up those relationships, and it then becomes an organic thing.
It's the same I've said to people. You don't walk down the street suddenly because you've now got a book, and everybody that you're going to bump into, you're going to go, buy a copy. You're going to walk down the street and you're going to say, oh, hi. And if it's like me, I'll be there for 3 years because I've got to know everybody's life story. But you start to just have a conversation with somebody, and you find out a little bit about them, and suddenly you might find, oh, there's got something in common, and then you start, oh, and do you know so and so, and you'll introduce them to, and it's the exact same, I think, on building your audience and connecting with your audience. And some people are very scared of that notion of what they do put out there, and like you say, and just be yourself, go out there and start, be online, start talking, find people to talk to that are going to be interested in what you're doing, and you'd be interested in them. That's
dive in. Don't wait any longer, because these platforms are an absolute gift. And it keeps you, what I like about Twitter as well is your fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the industry at large, what's coming out in terms of children's books, who are the hot properties, who are the people to know, and that network of writers, and that's hugely valuable, and it helps you feel part of it. Writing can at times be very lonely. It can at times be very hard. But that can be a way to keep yourself motivated. You'll see people on there. I saw a writer a few weeks ago saying, today it's a hard day being a writer, and then everybody's piling on saying, oh, we know, keep going. Tomorrow will be another day. You need a bit of that. Not too much. It's easy to fall into the Twitter sphere and never get yourself back out. Schedule yourself a wee time. Just dip a toe in the water if you're unsure at first. Start by following Cranachan, all of our authors, see what they're doing and saying. Some of them are, Twitter master users.
So I'm just conscious we're just about really out of time. Can I say thank you so much, Anne? You have shared a lot of great tips, ideas, and I'm sure everybody who's watched this has loved it. And I'm just going to pop up Willie's comment there. Said he feels like he was in the classroom with my teacher listening to this lovely lady. So thank you.
Thank you, Willie. That's lovely. That's been my day. Do you know, this was so much fun. Thank you so much, Kim, for the invitation. It was great fun.
Oh, yeah, absolutely loved it. So thank you so much. Right, folks, you can tune in next week. We're going to have, I'm going to be talking to one of our illustrators. So those of you who are maybe thinking about how do I work with an illustrator, we'll be doing some conversations about that. We're doing quite a lot of stuff this month on children's books, and we'll have a panel event with a few of our authors later on in the month too. So thank you so much, Anne. We'll say goodbye to everybody watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Bye-bye, everyone.